of interesting conversations at the Nasscom Game Developers Conference, and here we are now with Hrishi Oberoi, who is the Director, Games and Studios at Disney UTV. And Hrishi has, of course, been a veteran of sorts because you've spent, what, 10 plus years developing games?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us, you're here this year at the conference. What is it that's caught your eye, caught your mind?
The conference has become much bigger. It's become much bigger, and there have been a lot more people who have been successful. The industry is growing really fast. Rajesh had talked about this in the morning of the first day, how there are 170 people now. And the reason of that is because the barrier of entry is much lower. The other thing that I've noticed is the quality of these games are becoming at much higher standard than it's ever been before. That's because we have the other thing that is very interesting is that you're getting a lot of students who are doing very interesting projects. One of the things that the conference brings is the build your own game initiative, and that has now started creating content that is as good from the students as published titles out there. So the quality is really improved.
It's interesting that over the last 2 days, I've heard a lot about Indian indie developers who are out there developing games, but largely obviously for an international audience.
Right.
Not too many people are talking about the domestic Indian market and the growth rates here, and if there's money to be made, if Indians will start paying for their games or not. What's your sense?
Interestingly enough, that's what my topic was about. There's a fundamental reason why that's not happened yet. Today, we have the majority of the market is actually the feature phone market. They're really low-end phones, which today you and I would not use anymore. We've all, for the last few years, have been using the Android phones, which Samsung has or LG has or whatever, or iPhones, etc. But really, the bulk of the market, the bottom of the pyramid of gaming in India is the feature phone market. There's 600 million plus feature phones out there in the market. Of that, the addressable market that is, data enabled and data active is about 144 million. And that's a huge market, and that's where the payment happens. Because they have operator billing on those phones, therefore the friction to pay through that market is very, very easy. Having said that, all the developers in the conference you would have seen, they're very, very gung-ho on going and developing content for the global market, because if they try to do it for the Indian market, they're developing for smartphones, which is easier to develop for. The barrier to entry to develop for this market is much less.
So you're saying developing perhaps for the good old-fashioned phones is more difficult than actually making a game for Android or iOS?
Absolutely.
But it's interesting, you're saying that's where the money is. So explain that to us in a little more detail, this feature phone versus smartphone issue.
Sure. The feature phone games, that's been the business for the last 10 years. That's where, once VAS started in India about 10 years ago, when we had the first phones that could take photographs, etc., and had data enabled on them. These kind of feature phones, actually, that industry evolved so that payment became easier. The operator made sure that they could get the payment out of the user. Once the smartphones came in, smartphones now have stores like the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store and Windows Marketplace, etc., which allow content to be distributed for free. And the only way to pay on those stores is through credit card. Now, unfortunately, we are a credit card poor country. There's not that many people out there who have credit card, and fewer still who are willing to use it, especially online on a mobile phone.
So as a game developer, what does that kind of throw up for you in terms of challenges and opportunities? Because when you're looking at this bottom of the pyramid market, which Disney UTV has been, of course, capturing for many years now, how is that development different from a more swish, high-end phone for which you're creating a game?
You have to be a lot more nimble, and you can't really think of the epic. You can't think of the next Mahabharat on a mobile phone. Whereas technically you can do that on a smartphone. On the feature phones, it's a lot tougher. So you have to make sure that you get the game out quickly, which works on that kind of phone because of its limitations. It's low heap size, low processing power, etc. And after that is done, you have to make sure that it supports all the other types of smartphones. So that is what we call porting, and the porting cost could go as high as developing the game itself. So once that is done, then you have to be able to have the strength to be able to distribute it, because you can't just create the game then port the game, but you have to even make sure that you distribute it. So that challenge is something that India Games and Disney UTV has been really good with. That for a regular developer becomes a little tough, because they don't have the distribution strength. They have to go to a publisher. They don't have the ability to integrate billing, etc.
Sure. So if we crystal ball gaze into the future, 2014-15, what's likely to come up on the scene? Because I've been hearing a lot of stuff. You hear companies like Square Enix looking at big, aggressive India plans. More consoles are coming in the market from Sony and from Microsoft, etc. So what's on the horizon?
I actually agree with what Wada-san from Square Enix said. He said that you have to culturalize. Of course, that's a very long-term future thinking, and that's the beauty of it. If you start sitting here and think as an industry, you need to look at the industry from a 10-year or 15-year perspective. To do that, you have to start now. And when you start now, you start thinking of content for smartphone, local content for smartphones. It will not make money immediately, maybe not in the next 6 to 8, not 6 months to a year at least. But if you get a grip of it, once the billing friction gets solved, once the distribution friction gets solved, then that local content will start being very relevant on the smartphones, and that's where Square Enix and all these other companies coming in. If they have the right content, if Disney UTV has the right content for the local market, I think we'll get a hockey stick at that point.
Okay, which then brings me to the other point, this upfront premium mode of payment versus the free to play, which is not really free, because the whole idea is to hook you in the game and then get you to pay later, right? So what is this evolving model, particularly for the Indian market?
Free to play will work. The reason is because, so billing aside, right, that's one barrier. Once that billing barrier gets solved, that friction goes away for the user. The international developers and publishers are already here with their content, because it's the internet, the content is available for everyone in the world. So those games are all free to play in any case. So as the users will get used to that. So it's going to be here to stay. The only challenge there could be, what is the level of microtransaction? Today we call a microtransaction in a free to play game, which is the lowest amount of the lowest unit of transaction, and unfortunately in these stores the lowest unit is $1, which is 60 rupees, 55 rupees to 60 rupees on the stores. For India, that's not going to work. You're going to have a microtransaction that's going to go at as low as 1 rupee or 5 rupees.
Okay, so obviously a lot of translation required for this market. So before I wrap up, let me ask you, what do you do in your spare time? Do you play video games?
I wish. That was my hobby. These days I play a lot just to keep up with what's going on, because that's
it's
really
work,
important.
It's work.
But along with time spent at work and with at home and family and things like that, you just don't get time to do that.
So when you're actually on a console and playing, and someone says, "Oh no, do this for me," you say, "No, I'm actually working. Don't disturb me."
Yeah, that's been my excuse for 12 years, and that's been my excuse with my wife also for the last 6 years. But I mean, it's not just that. It's just even if I want to play, and even if I don't have to give an excuse, you just don't get the time.
I can imagine. Well, anyway, all the best for the coming 1 year. And thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.